Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. You know, picture this for a second. You're listening right now, and you can probably imagine standing in a quiet foyer.
Oh, yeah. Very vivid.
Right. The air in the room is heavy. It's, filled with hushed murmurs and that really faint, specific smell of floral arrangements.
Yep, that unmistakable scent.
And someone wearing a dark suit is standing near the doorway, and as you walk past, they hand you a folded piece of heavy cardstock.
And you just take it. You don't even think about it.
Exactly. You take it, you maybe glance at the front cover, maybe you run your thumb over the sharp crease in the paper, and then you walk into the room and take a seat.
Right.
You were holding a funeral program. And it's like this object you only ever encounter on the absolute worst, most surreal days of your life.
It really is. It's tied to such heavy moments.
Yeah, and because it's so intrinsically linked to those overwhelming moments, you've probably never paused to realize that this simple, just ubiquitous piece of paper is actually a highly sophisticated psychological tool.
It really hides in plain sight, doesn't it?
It totally does.
Like we accept it as just part of the furniture of mourning. You sign the guest book, you take the program, you find a pew. It's just this profoundly standardized ritual in a landscape that is, honestly, entirely chaotic.
So chaotic.
But when you actually strip away the familiarity of it, you realize it is doing a tremendous amount of unseen work for every single person in that room.
And that unseen work is exactly what we are going to unpack today. For this deep dive, we are looking at the mechanics of mourning through a completely different lens.
Which is so necessary.
It is. We're drawing on some really extensive insights from the funeral program site. For you listening, they are a highly trusted resource that provides guidance and templates for families who, suddenly find themselves tasked with creating these documents.
Right, and we aren't here to talk about, like, printer margins or paperweights.
No, definitely not.
The material we're looking at delves deep into the psychology, the historical permanence, and really the emotional architecture of the program itself.
It's fascinating. Okay, let's unpack this. Because it really forces a perspective shift, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You start looking at this utilitarian object, something that essentially looks like a basic itinerary, and you realize it's actually acting as a cognitive anchor.
A cognitive anchor. Let's start right there, actually, because I think there's a massive misconception about what this document is even supposed to do in that immediate moment.
Oh, for sure. People totally misunderstand its primary function.
Right. Because if you look at the text inside, it is, at its core, just a roadmap for the service.
Yep.
It tells you, when the opening remarks happen, who is reading the eulogy, what song is playing next.
When the closing prayer is.
Yeah.
All those logistical details.
Exactly. But if I can be completely honest here, when I am grieving, like when my world has just been completely shattered by a loss, the absolute last thing I care about is an itinerary.
Right. Who cares about the schedule?
Right. Why does knowing what song comes next actually matter when someone you love is gone? I don't care.
And that is exactly the friction we need to explore. Consciously, you're right. You don't care about the schedule. You are devastated.
Totally.
But subconsciously,
Yeah.
your brain desperately needs it. We really have to look at the neurobiology of what happens to a person when they enter a state of acute grief.
Oh, okay. Let's get into that.
There's this phenomenon often referred to as grief brain.
Grief brain.
Yeah. When you suffer a profound loss, your amygdala, which is the part of the brain responsible for processing threats and emotions, it essentially hijacks your cognitive functions.
It just takes over.
Completely takes over.
Yeah.
And your prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and planning and executive function, it basically just powers down.
So you are literally not thinking straight. You are operating in a state of cognitive overload.
You're in a total fog.
Yeah.
People constantly describe feeling unmoored or disoriented or like the time is moving at the wrong speed.
Wow. Yeah, I felt that.
Right. Your brain is expending so much energy just processing the raw trauma of the loss
Yeah.
that it has zero bandwidth left for anything else.
That makes so much sense.
In a normal everyday setting, a little bit of uncertainty about what's going to happen next is like mildly annoying.
Sure, like waiting in line or something.
Exactly. But in a room heavy with grief, uncertainty breeds acute anxiety. The brain, because it's already overloaded, perceives the unknown as a literal threat.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in that room and I have no idea if we're going to be there for 20 minutes or 2 hours,
Right.
or if I'm going to be asked to speak suddenly, or if I'm supposed to stand up or sit down, That low-grade logistical anxiety is directly competing with my ability to actually process my feelings.
Precisely. You nailed it. And the roadmap, the program, provides an immediate grounding remedy to that anxiety. It acts as a cognitive offload.
A cognitive offload, I like that.
Yeah, by explicitly outlining the flow of events from the opening remarks to the closing moments, the program is essentially whispering to the attendee, hey, you do not need to worry about the logistics. We have the boundaries set. Just follow along.
Wow. It completely removes the burden of anticipation.
It really does.
It gives you permission to just surrender to the experience, doesn't it?
It does. And beyond just the individual relief, it creates a really vital sense of unity in the room.
Unity. How so?
Well, a funeral is a collective ritual. And rituals, from a sociological standpoint, require synchronization. Everyone in the room needs to be on the same page, quite literally and figuratively.
Okay, but is that synchronization really about emotional unity? I have to push back a little here.
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't it just about preventing social awkwardness? Like, nobody wants to be the only person standing up when everyone else is kneeling or, clapping when they're supposed to be completely silent.
Oh, avoiding social embarrassment is definitely the functional surface layer of it. Nobody wants to stick out.
Right. It's mortifying.
But the deeper psychological mechanism at play is the creation of a collective rhythm.
A collective rhythm.
Yeah. When an entire room full of people knows that, say after the second reading comes a moment of silent reflection, a collective mental preparation occurs.
I see.
The attendees can brace themselves for a difficult eulogy, or they can allow themselves to fully let go and cry during a specific piece of music because they know the parameters of the moment. They know when the emotional intensity will peak and, crucially, when it will recede.
It's honestly like navigating a foreign city.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, even if you've been to a funeral before, you haven't been to this one for this person, the emotional terrain is completely new and rocky. So the program is your map through that specific city.
Exactly. And imagine that city without the map. Imagine a service with no program, no announcements, no structure provided beforehand.
It would be awful.
The atmosphere in the room would be fundamentally different. There would just be this persistent underlying hum of tension. People would be constantly scanning the room, watching the officiant, trying to guess what comes next.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to relax at all.
Right. So by neutralizing that tension with a printed roadmap, you clear the psychological space. The paper absorbs the anxiety of the unknown, leaving room only for the emotional work of the day.
That reframes it entirely for me. It's not an itinerary. It's a temporary social contract for the 60 or 90 minutes you are in that room. Like, we agree to move through these difficult steps together.
Yes, exactly.
And knowing the person next to you is walking the exact same emotional path provides a profound comfort.
It really does.
But, of course, the service eventually ends. The officiant gives the closing remarks. People stand up, they offer their condolences to the family, and they walk out to their cars. And this is where the physical object undergoes a pretty massive transformation. It stops being a map.
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it transitions from a practical logistical tool into something enduring.
Right.
The insights we are drawing from the funeral program site highlight that beyond their immediate utilitarian purpose, these programs hold immense emotional value by providing a tangible connection to the person who passed away. They become cherished keepsakes.
I really want to scrutinize that word. Tangible.
Okay, let's do it.
Because, we live in a world that is completely dominated by screens. When someone passes away, we see the digital memorial posts on social media.
Right, the Facebook tributes.
Exactly. We send text messages of condolence. We look at photos on our phones. Why does a folded piece of cardstock hold so much weight? Is the physical paper nature of the handout actually crucial to processing grief? Or is it just a holdover from a pre-digital age?
The physicality is absolutely crucial, and it actually has to do with how the human nervous system responds to trauma.
Really? The nervous system?
Yeah. We talked about how abstract and overwhelming grief is. It's an internal sport. It's invisible. When you are drowning in an abstract emotion, one of the most effective psychological interventions is somatic grounding.
Somatic ground?
Engaging the physical senses to force the brain back into the present moment.
Oh, like the classic grounding technique where you have to find 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, and so on.
Exactly that. Now, apply that to the funeral service itself.
Mm-hmm.
Watch people sitting in the pews. They're rarely just letting the program sit on their laps.
That's true. They're usually fiddling with it.
They are gripping it. They are tracing the sharp edges of the paper with their thumbs.
Mm-hmm.
They are feeling the texture of the cardstock. They are folding it and unfolding it. It gives grieving hands a physical task.
Oh, I never thought about it like that.
When eye contact with the grieving family feels too intense, or when looking at the casket is simply too painful to bear, the program provides a physical focal point.
It functions as a shield.
Yes, a shield.
It gives you a designated, socially acceptable, safe space to direct your eyes when you feel like you are just going to fall apart. You can look down, study the print, trace the photo, and just gather yourself.
What's fascinating here is a physical act of reading it provides a structured moment of reflection. It gently forces the brain to focus on the positive aspects of the individual's life that are printed on the page, rather than spiraling into the raw trauma of the loss. But the tangible nature goes beyond just the hour of the service. Because, as you said, a screen is ephemeral. A digital photo on your phone is just one of thousands in a camera roll. You swipe past it and it's gone.
It disappears.
But a physical object takes up space in the real world.
And it carries the literal imprint of the day. Think about, finding an old funeral program tucked inside a Bible.
Oh, absolutely.
Or sitting at the bottom of a cedar memory box years later. If you're listening to this, you've probably had that experience. You pull it out, and it's not pristine.
Rarely.
It might have a teardrop stain on the cover. It might be deeply creased down the middle from being clutched inside a coat pocket. The physical degradation of the paper is a testament to the mourning process itself.
That is such a vital distinction.
Ugh.
When you hold that program a decade later, you aren't just remembering the person who died. You are experiencing a tactile reconnection with the collective love and grief of that specific afternoon.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
You are holding the exact object that grounded you when your world was falling apart. You simply cannot replicate that somatic memory with a PDF on a tablet. The object permanence of the paper validates the permanence of the love.
Okay, I'm completely sold on the necessity of the physical paper. You've convinced me.
Good.
But let's be real, a blank piece of cardstock wouldn't offer any of this comfort.
Obviously not.
The paper is the vessel, but the content is the payload. And that brings us to the actual meat of the document, the storytelling. Because these aren't just schedules, they are miniature biographies.
They are the final authorized summary of a human being. And honestly, the editorial challenge of creating that summary is staggering.
It really is. Imagine it like curating a museum exhibit of a person's entire existence. You have this massive warehouse of artifacts, 80 years of memories, thousands of photographs, endless stories, the triumphs, the failures, the quirks.
It's so much material.
And you are tasked with distilling all of that down to fit onto a folded piece of 8x10 paper. If I'm the person making that program, the pressure to make it perfect would be completely paralyzing.
Oh, it is.
How do families possibly capture an entire, messy, complex human life on such a tiny canvas without feeling like they're doing the person a massive disservice?
The paralysis you were describing is incredibly common. You see families agonizing over the font choice, terrified of leaving out its second cousin, trying to cram every single professional accomplishment into a bulleted list.
Which just turns it into a resume.
Exactly. But the liberating philosophy we find in our core material from the funeral program site is that this process is not about complexity or perfection. It is entirely about meaning.
Meaning over perfection. What does that actually look like in practice, though?
It means shifting your goal. The objective is not to provide an exhaustive chronological timeline of every job they held or every vacation they took. Like you said, it is not a resume.
Right.
The objective is to evoke the feeling of who they were. It's about capturing their essence.
So it's really about giving yourself permission to leave things out.
Exactly. It grants families the permission to let go of the impossible standard of a comprehensive historical document and instead focus purely on authenticity.
I love that.
A simple program that features, say, one slightly blurry photograph of the person laughing uncontrollably, accompanied by a single heartfelt paragraph about how much they love their garden.
Yeah.
That will have a vastly more profound emotional impact than a technically perfect, sterile document that lists 50 years of employment history.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because human lives aren't sterile or perfectly formatted, we are wonderfully messy.
We really are.
And the programs that hit the hardest are the ones that lean into that idiosyncrasy. I mean, I've seen programs where instead of a formal posed portrait on the front cover, it's a picture of the person in their fishing gear.
Oh, I love those.
Right, covered in mud, holding up a tiny fish and looking happier than ever. Or a program that included the deceased's famous, fiercely guarded recipe for chocolate chip cookies on the back page.
And those are the exact details that fulfill the program's role in providing comfort to the attendees.
Exactly.
When someone is sitting in the pew, totally overwhelmed by the finality of death, and they turn the program over and see that cookie recipe or that muddy fishing photo, it breaks the tension.
It
They
does.
smile through their tears. It sparks a specific joyful memory.
It shifts the focus in the room from the abstraction of loss to the highly specific reality of the legacy. It makes the grief manageable because you're momentarily reconnecting with the idiosyncratic joy of the person you lost.
That is the power of authentic storytelling.
Yeah.
But what makes this miniature biography truly fascinating is that it is simultaneously serving two completely different audiences across time.
Two audiences.
Yes, it serves the people sitting in the room today, giving them that immediate comfort and connection we just talked about. But it also serves an audience that hasn't even been born yet.
Ah, you're talking about the archive.
Yes. The historical permanence of these documents. This is a crucial yet incredibly often overlooked role. These programs invariably become part of family archives.
Yeah, really.
They document critical details that are meant to be revisited, shared, and passed down through generations.
Let's pull the listener into this because this is where the scope of this topic really expands. Think about your own family tree right now.
It's quite a thought experiment.
Imagine rummaging through an old, dusty box in an attic and pulling out a funeral program from your great-great-grandfather's service from a century ago. It instantly stops being just a piece of paper. It becomes a literal time capsule.
It's a profound genealogical treasure. When we think of historical records or genealogy, we usually think of, like, census data, birth certificates, or property deeds.
Right, official documents.
Those documents are vital, sure, but they're cold. They're just bureaucratic data points.
Huh.
A funeral program provides something those official documents never can: rich emotional context.
Right, like a census tells me my great-grandfather lived in Chicago in 1920, but a funeral program tells me who he actually loved.
Exactly. Decades from now, that piece of cardstock might be the only surviving record of who a person considered their true family, which often extends far beyond bloodlines.
Very true. Chosen family is huge.
It details who was chosen to stand up and speak for them. It lists the pallbearers. It records their specific passions, the community organizations they dedicated their time to, or the specific poetry or scriptures that define their worldview. By detailing exactly how they were mourned, the document tells future generations exactly how they were loved.
But wait, if I am the one writing the obituary or designing the program today, and I suddenly realize that I'm not just writing for my aunts and uncles in the room, but I am actually authoring a primary historical document for my unborn great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
Doesn't that bring all the pressure right back? Like, does that historical permanence shift the responsibility of the people creating it?
This raises an important question about what we choose to commit to the historical record. It definitely elevates the creation of the program from a temporary administrative chore to an act of historical preservation.
Right. It feels much heavier now.
But I would argue that recognizing this permanence shouldn't induce panic. Rather, it should demand radical honesty.
Radical honesty. How so?
Because history is incredibly fragile. If the family doesn't write down the stories, if they don't explicitly capture the nuances of these relationships on paper, those details can completely evaporate within a single generation.
Wow, that's sad but true.
The funeral program acts as an anchor against the erosion of time. You are solidifying the narrative of this person's place in the world. And for historians and genealogists, the data hidden in these programs is invaluable. They often contain maiden names, precise birthplaces, and comprehensive lists of surviving and predeceased relatives that might not be recorded anywhere else.
And it's not just familial data, it's a cultural artifact too. The language used in the obituary, the aesthetic of the design, the balance between religious and secular elements, it all provides a snapshot of humanity's relationship with death at a very specific moment in time.
Absolutely.
It's just incredible to think that something put together in a frantic 3-day window under extreme duress goes on to become a permanent historical artifact.
It really speaks to the gravity of the task.
Yeah.
But while paper is the traditional medium for these archives, and we've just spent a lot of time romanticizing the tactile value of cardstock and attic discoveries, we have to acknowledge the reality of the era we live in.
Oh, the digital age.
Yes, the format is rapidly evolving. We are no longer strictly bound to ink and paper.
Right. We are moving into the digital frontier of remembrance. Modern technology has completely blown the borders off the traditional funeral program.
It really has.
We are seeing digital versions shared online for people who can't attend, and physical programs that include links and QR codes leading to massive online photo galleries, video tributes, and interactive memorial pages.
The integration of technology is radically expanding the canvas of memory. And the most significant impact of this is how it democratizes grief.
Let's break that down because the concept of democratizing grief is fascinating. Historically, the mourning ritual was deeply geographically bound.
Very much so.
If you lived across the country and couldn't afford a plane ticket, or if you were too elderly to travel, or if your job wouldn't give you the time off, you simply missed the funeral. You are entirely excluded from that collective rhythm we talked about earlier.
Which results in what psychologists call a secondary loss.
A secondary loss.
Yeah, you suffer the primary loss of the person dying, and then you suffer the secondary loss of being isolated from your community during the mourning process. You are denied the closure of the ritual.
Oh, that makes total sense. But now, sharing a digital program, often alongside a live stream link, completely bridges that geographic divide.
It does.
Someone sitting in a living room in London can open the PDF on their tablet, read the same obituary, look at the same photographs, and follow the exact same order of service at the exact same moment as the people sitting in the pews in New York. They are participating in the ritual.
It allows the community to remain intact, regardless of physical proximity. And the inclusion of QR codes is a brilliant bridge between the physical and the digital.
Yeah, QR codes are everywhere now.
The attendee in the room still gets the somatic grounding of the physical paper. They still have the anchor. But by simply holding up their phone, that finite piece of paper instantly expands into an infinite digital space.
The constraints of the 8x10 paper are gone. If you could only afford to print 3 photos on the physical program, the QR code can link to a cloud gallery of 3,000 photos. A favorite quote printed on the back can link to an actual audio recording of the deceased telling a story. It creates a multi-sensory, multimedia legacy.
It's incredibly powerful.
But let me challenge this evolution because I know there is friction here for a lot of people.
Sure, let's hear it.
When you start adding QR codes, hyperlinks, and video galleries to a funeral program, do you risk making the mourning process feel too much like a social media profile?
That's a common fear.
Right. Does digitizing it gamify or cheapen the solemnity of the event? We talked about the quiet dignity of holding a piece of paper. Does pulling out a smartphone in the middle of a funeral shatter that reverence?
It's a very valid concern. There is a persistent societal fear that technology sterilizes or commercializes our sacred rituals. The intrusion of the screen into the sanctuary feels jarring to some.
It definitely can.
However, if we look at the underlying principles of why we memorialize people, a very grounding perspective emerges from our source material. The format and the delivery mechanism are evolving, but the fundamental emotional significance, the drive to honor, to remember, and to tell the story remains exactly the same.
So the technology is just a tool, not the master.
Precisely. Technology is merely a new vessel for an ancient human need. We have been building monuments to our dead for millennia. A QR code doesn't replace the grief, it simply provides a larger, more dynamic canvas for the love.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it.
Furthermore, we have to consider authenticity. If the person who passed away lived a life that was thoroughly documented in digital video, voice notes, and thousands of digital photos, it would almost be inauthentic to restrict their final memorial strictly to static ink on paper. Incorporating the digital realm accurately reflects the modern human experience.
That makes a lot of sense. We are using the tools of our era to do what humans have always done. It's just that our monuments now include hyperlinks. But this brings up a massive, very practical dilemma. Let's put ourselves back in the shoes of the grieving family for a second.
Okay.
We've established that this program is a vital cognitive anchor, a highly curated storytelling canvas, a primary historical document for future generations, and now a multimedia digital hub.
It's a lot.
How on earth is a family who is currently in the throes of acute grief and cognitive overload supposed to pull all of this together in the 3 or 4 days before a funeral? It sounds like an overwhelming logistical mountain.
It absolutely can be a logistical nightmare, which is why the final revelation we need to explore is perhaps the most profound of all. It addresses that exact overwhelm.
I'm all ears.
Creating a truly meaningful, resonant program does not require advanced graphic design skills or a degree in archiving. And this is where the availability of guided frameworks and templates becomes an absolute lifeline.
Okay, yes, a template saves you from having to figure out how to format a trifold brochure in Microsoft Word while you were crying. That is practically a lifesaver.
It's huge.
But I want to go deeper than just templates save time, because there's an argument to be made that the actual process of building the program is, in itself, a crucial component of the grieving process.
We really need to unpack the therapeutic psychology of curation here.
Yes, let's do that.
When a family sits down to create this program, they are forced to embark on a massive emotional sorting project. They have to open the dusty photo albums. They have to scroll through years of digital camera rolls.
That sounds emotionally exhausting.
It is, but it's also necessary. They have to sit together and debate which 3 stories best summarize their father's life for the obituary. They have to decide which poem or which scripture or which song lyric best reflects the person's worldview.
It forces them to actively engage with the life that was lived, rather than just drowning in the fact of the death.
Exactly. That process of sifting, sorting, and debating forces the family to reflect on the positive aspects of the individual's life. It takes the chaotic, overwhelming, abstract pain of loss and forces the brain to organize it into a linear, coherent narrative.
So, what does this all mean? If I'm understanding this correctly, the work of building the program isn't an administrative chore that gets in the way of grieving. The work is an active form of grieving.
It is arguably one of the healthiest early stages of the grief process.
Mm.
In the days immediately following a sudden loss, people often experience a desperate, restless need to do something.
Right, that nervous energy.
There is a massive amount of undirected energy and profound love that suddenly has nowhere to go because the recipient is gone. It creates a frantic feeling. Designing the program gives the family a project. It gives them a tangible, focused, highly structured way to channel their love, their loss, and their nervous energy into something beautiful and impactful.
I can vividly visualize this. Imagine a family sitting around a kitchen table late at night, 3 days before the service. There are shoe boxes of photos scattered everywhere, half-empty coffee cups.
Oh, yeah.
There are tears, absolutely. But there is also probably sudden, unexpected laughter as someone unearths a ridiculous picture from a disastrous family road trip in 1995.
Those moments are so precious.
There are gentle arguments about whether Mom would have wanted a traditional hymn or her favorite Fleetwood Mac song. They are sharing stories they haven't thought about in decades. They are comforting each other through the shared act of creating this document. The document is facilitating the family's healing before it is even sent to the printer.
And this is exactly where the value of templates and structured guidance truly shines. By utilizing a pre-designed template, like the ones from the funeral program site, the family is provided with a cognitive safety net.
A cognitive safety net.
Remember we talked about grief brain earlier? Your executive functioning is compromised. You do not want to be fighting with a word processor over margin alignments or pixel resolutions when your heart is broken. The template handles the technical mechanics for you.
It completely removes the friction from the curation process.
Precisely. That structural support ensures that the family is not overwhelmed by the logistics of graphic design. It removes the frustration and the fear of doing it wrong. By offloading the technical burden, it allows the family to focus 100% of their remaining cognitive and emotional energy on the storytelling.
Which is the most important part.
It allows them to execute this final act of service for their loved one with profound care and dignity. The process stops being a source of stress and transforms into a sanctuary of memory.
It truly is a final act of care. You are meticulously preparing how your loved one will be presented to the world one last time. And simultaneously, you are building the roadmap that will gently guide your community through the agonizing process of saying goodbye.
It really is a double duty.
It's a massive responsibility, but when you look at it through this lens, it is also a profound privilege.
It brings everything full circle. These programs matter deeply. They are not an afterthought. They are not just administrative paperwork for a funeral home. They are central to the human architecture of mourning.
So, to summarize the journey we've been on today, and I'm talking directly to you listening now, we started by looking at a simple folded piece of paper, an object you might have previously just gripped in your hand, glanced at to see how much longer the service would be, and then tucked away and forgotten.
Right.
But by dissecting the psychology and history behind it, we've discovered a brilliantly complex tool. In the immediate, overwhelming chaos of a funeral, it acts as a vital cognitive anchor, providing structure, reducing anxiety, and synchronizing a room full of grieving people into a collective rhythm.
And in the quiet, difficult days and years that follow, It transitions into a tangible anchor. It becomes a physical object that your hands can hold when the abstract weight of grief is too much, carrying the literal imprint of the mourning process itself.
Looking further down the timeline, it serves as a massive genealogical treasure, a miniature, highly curated biography that archives the emotional context of a life for generations who haven't even been born yet.
A literal time capsule.
And as we navigate the modern world, it embraces the digital frontier, using technology to bridge geographic divides and expand the canvas of memory beyond the constraints of paper. And finally, the very act of creating it serves as a vital therapeutic mechanism, allowing a grieving family to organize their chaos into a narrative of love.
The ultimate takeaway here is that regardless of the format, whether a family chooses a simple black and white printout on plain paper, an elaborate glossy booklet, or a sophisticated digital hub embedded with QR codes and video links, the core mission remains eternally the same.
The mission to honor them.
Yes, the
Yeah.
vision is to create a lasting keepsake that honors a human life with absolute dignity and together a fractured community in shared, structured remembrance.
It is a beautiful distillation of an incredibly complex human ritual. I know for a fact that I will never look at one of those folded pieces of paper the same way again.
Same here.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final lingering thought to mull over. We've spent all this time analyzing how these programs tell the story of a life that has already ended. We've talked about the immense pressure families feel to capture the essence of their loved one, distilling decades into a few pages.
Right.
But what if we take that lens and turn it inward, right now? If you had to design your own funeral program today, not as some dark, morbid exercise, but as a genuine, unflinching reflection of the legacy you are building right this second, what would the order of service of your life actually look like?
That's a big question.
What are the specific photos that capture your truest self? What are the specific stories, the quirks, the passions, and the personal touches you would want your loved ones holding in their trembling hands to remember you by? And perhaps the most challenging question of all, are you living a life right now that authentically reflects those values?
That is a deeply powerful pivot. It transforms the funeral program from a retrospective reflection of death into an active, demanding blueprint for how to live.
Exactly. It's an uncomfortable question, but it's one absolutely worth asking yourself. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into a heavy topic we usually try to avoid, but one that inevitably touches every single one of us. We hope you walk away seeing the invisible, profound weight of these everyday objects. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.